What's up, everyone? Welcome to Cadowin's channel. In this video, you're going to be learning a bunch of awesome stuff about software engineering. I'm going to do a deep dive on the fundamental, essential aspects of computer science, data structures, algorithms. You can just watch this video and you'll become a programming guru in no time. Actually, that's not true. I'm not going to be really doing any of that. Sorry to burst your bubble. I've kind of talked about in my other video, little minor video that I had about what the general concept behind what programming is, and I'll also go into that in a little bit more detail maybe. But there are a bunch of really good concepts, or not concepts, a bunch of really good materials out there that if you really want to learn how to program, you can utilize those resources, and it will give you, I think, the foundation that you would need to be able to start to learn. Because you almost have to learn what the alphabet is, and learn how to put words together before you can write, your next great novel. And and that's basically what kind of journey you're in for. Now, if you've been programming for years and you understand what a variable is and you understand what arrays are and you already know a lot of that stuff, you'll definitely be ahead of the game. But if you're like me, just coming from like having zero programming experience at all, and you want to learn to program, I would recommend going through Code Academy. It's a really good online tutorial where they'll teach you all kinds of stuff of from Git to Python to Ruby to whatever you can think of. They have different stuff that you can pay for or use for free, and the free option that they have is pretty good. Like even Launch School recommends that you go through like their beginning Ruby section. And then on top of that, I recommend Launch School. It's a really detailed. It's not a boot camp per se because it's their slogan is that the slow path to a software career, and they teach you all the fundamentals. They teach you the things that are not going to change depending upon what language you learn and all that stuff. And a lot of times people want to know, well, what language should I learn? And that's like asking a carpenter, like, well, what tool do you use? And he might be like, well, if I'm going to cut some wood, I'm going to use a saw. If I'm going to hammer in a nail, I'm going to use a hammer. So that's kind of like how you want to have your mindset in terms of which language to use. Me personally, I agree with Launch School's decision to use Ruby to teach you programming. Now, some people say, well, learning Ruby is a waste because not everybody uses Ruby anymore or whatever, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. If you learn one language to like mastery, you can pick up another language a lot more simply. So it's almost like if you were studying your first, second language and you learned Latin, learning Latin would be pretty difficult because, it's totally different than what you're used to, whatever. But after you learn Latin, it'd probably be pretty easy for you to pick up Spanish, Italian, Romanian, Portuguese. So keep that in mind in terms of trying to figure out what you should be learning in programming. But go through Launch School's bookshelf. They have a bunch of free books. They have an introduction to programming, which is great material, and it will help you. It'll go into detail about every little thing that you need to learn because even just making this video, as soon as I started to describe something, I'm like, oh well, I got to tell you what this other thing is, that this other thing's related to, that this other thing's related to, so you even know what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm just going to make these videos, just kind of talking about maybe different programming topics, different little pieces here and there. I just don't think I could put together a comprehensive how to learn to program, you know, uh, series that would be worthwhile when there are already so many great resources out there. Another one that's really good is you can check out this guy on YouTube. He even goes on Code Wars. His name is Jesus Castillo. I believe he's out of Spain, and he really knows Ruby immensely well. And he'll go through and explain what's going on with the different methods and different topics that you can follow along with. So yeah, check him out. But start at the basics. Uh, Realize what your strengths and your weaknesses are and try to determine what is the most necessary things for you to learn to be good at programming. And for me, I would say that the key concepts are whatever's in that introduction to programming book from Launch School and Code Academy. Master this. I don't mean like you just go through them and you're like, oh, this makes sense. I get that a loop has four components, whatever, and you start the loop, you end the loop, you go through the loop, you increment the loop. Increment is a term to mean to increase. and what a loop returns and all this stuff. You have to be able to, if someone said, give me uh, a string of words and then go through each word in that uh, string and uppercase every other word or every other letter, or take a particular word and reverse it, and like, can you do that using loops? Can you do that using the each method, stuff like that? And what you're doing with the fundamentals is you're learning things that don't really change regardless of whatever language you're going to learn. And so that's where I would start. Again, apologies for the tangents. Once I get more used to this, I'll be able to better focus and hone my message. So for this stuff, I have solving problems, understanding what the problem is, details, implementing solutions. That's probably the majority of what you're going to be doing. And then you have the problem domain layer, as I was talking about before, solving the problem in a series of steps using logic, and then translating that logic into syntax. So I have this little method that I made. So if someone was to say, I want, let's say like your company or whatever says, I want you to create, let me make this a little more easily visible here. I use comments just for it to run. But I want you to create a new greeting for our work computer that greets the user and capitalizes their name. And they'll say, make this a method. So that seems pretty straightforward and easy, and it is. But the overall concept of what you're doing to solve this problem is no different than if someone said, hey, I need you to take hello world and find every single substring. You might be like, oh, substring, that's just H and then HE and then HEL. That's not a big deal. But when you sit down and you try to figure out how to logically implement that and then use syntax to make the computer do what you want and then save that information, it's quite a daunting task. And you have to do that so many times to get pretty good at it, I think. Some people are just naturally gifted at this kind of stuff, but if you keep at it, you can learn it, but it's going to require persistence and dedication, I think. So what I did for this problem was create a method called greeting, and then so you can see where it says problem, examples, algorithm. So we have problem. Oh, so what am I doing? I'm creating a method called greeting, and I'm going to need a greeting within that method. So need a greeting to the user. Basically, what you're doing is just kind of writing down an outline. So if somebody said write a 10-page paper about I don't know, the history of America, you may not be able to just sit there and just start writing a lot of stuff through free flow or whatever it's called, where you just extemporaneously write out whatever comes to mind. You might need to make an outline and then go through and fill out that outline. And that's basically what you're going to be doing in programming. You're going to be giving, like, your problem is an essay topic, and then your outline is your algorithm, and then your implementation of that outline to your research paper, that is going to be your translation to code. So you have need a greeting to the user and capitalizes their name. And then you can have examples. Like, I'll show you another example with that for another time. Data structure, you want to keep in mind what kind of data structures are you going to be using. Strings aren't really data structures. That's more of arrays and hashes, but that's another topic altogether. You can see all these different components. This is what it's required to actually program. There's a lot of stuff going on. And you also want to keep in mind about for your problem itself, your input and your output. And what that means is, like, what is the user going to be inputting into the program, and what is the program going to return back to the user or output? So output's different than return. I shouldn't have said that, but so there's a lot of stuff to keep in mind. So if you have a method that, like, the input to the method would be the greeting itself, or like a string, and then if the method upcases that string, that's what is output. And then your algorithm is just, like I said, your series of steps. But to take that back a little bit, while your algorithm can be seen as a series of steps to arrive at a specific programming solution, you want your algorithm to almost be like your thesis. Like, think of, like, in your research paper, you're like, well, what's your thesis? Oh, my thesis is, I'm going to write about space. I'm going to write about, I think black holes, there's probably more than 5 black holes in this certain space, whatever. That's your thesis. And then your algorithm would be the outline of your thesis. So with your algorithm, you want to keep it very high level and abstract. So if I was going to write an algorithm for this greeting method or for this problem, I would say something like, all right, so I want you to create a new greeting for our work computer that greets the user and capitalizes their name. So create a method that greets the user with with their name capitalized. And now it's my algorithm, and I would just leave that alone and not mess with that. And because that basically tells me very succinctly what I'm trying to do. And now if I want to go through and implement my pseudocode, pseudocode is just basically you just writing in English to explain what you're going to do. So I would say, okay, I want to define a method. Then I'm going to greet the user. Then I want to wait for the user to enter their name. And then when they do that, then I'm going to greet or print out a string greeting the user with their name capitalized. And yeah, and so that's basically what my pseudocode would be. And then I'm okay, so how would I define a method? Well, I would define greeting, and they would say names. That's what I would do. And then I may change this little minus sign to a plus because that lets me know that I've already got that. Excuse me, I got that done. Greet the user. So I'm gonna do a little puts. Puts is put string that just basically prints out a string to the computer's interface, so you and the user can interact with the software. So put string hello uh, employee, what is your name? And then I would say user. A lot of times you can use this, like this right here, this name in the greeting. This is called the method. Greeting is the method, and name is the parameter. The parameter is just like you're letting the computer know, hey, this method is going to need like some kind of it's not really a variable, like kind of like a variable in a way. So it has to have like, well, what is the user going to enter? So if you do greeting uh, whatever, it's going to work with whatever you enter into it. I know that's a bad example, but I think it might just make a little more sense if you see it. So I'm going to say user equals Catalan, and it's lowercase. So, okay, so user, oh wait, my fault. User, Catalan is a user, but what I'm looking for this is going to be gets.chomp. And whereas puts is put string, gets is get string. So get string is going to wait for the user to enter something and then push enter. And then the chomp is just removing the excess space. If you don't put chomp, the computer just puts like a backspace and it leaves like an indentation for like I don't know, another space. So you just use chomp to make it uh, more streamlined and better looking. I can put an example down here. So let's do answer equals gets.chomp. The computer's waiting for me to enter something. So if I enter whatever, and I do puts answer, there it is. But if I do answer equals gets, Catalan, oh, for some reason it doesn't actually show in this form IRB. I'm not too sure right now why it's not showing the new line character. It's probably something I've overlooked. Oh wait, maybe there's this. There it is, because I didn't actually invoke I didn't call the variable, or I didn't use the variable. I always forget if you invoke and you call methods, I forget what you do with variables if you just use them. But you can see here where it says Catalan \n. That's like a new line character. But if you use like answer equals gets.chomp, I do Catalan, it's just going to be Catalan without that space. So that's why I use .chomp. So user equals gets.chomp. Like, okay, so that's what I got. So I greeted the user, okay. And I'm going to wait for the user to enter their name. Well, that's with the gets. And then once they enter, and then I'm gonna actually I missed a step. So I'm working on my implementation of this, and I'm looking at my pseudocode, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I said wait for the user to enter their name, and then I say print out a string greeting the user with their name capitalized. But I forgot to put a space in here for me to save their name. So how am I going to save the name? I need to save the user's name as a variable. So I got that. So user equals gets.chomp. So I'm going to take this, so I finish that. And now I'm going to print out a string greeting the user with their name capitalized. So I'm going to do, I say print, so I'll use P instead of puts. Make P, um, hello, and this right here is known as string interpolation. All I'm doing is I'm putting the variable, and you think of this as like putting the variable within the string, so you can see it. So instead of saying hello user, it's going to say hello Catalan. I am the reason this. Oh, this is all because of this up here. Hello user. Let's do dot capitalize. Oops. Hello user dot capitalize. And capitalize is a method, like what I'm making now. I'm making a greeting method. Ruby has some methods already included in it, and one of them is capitalize, where it will upcase the first letter of a string. So that's why I'm using capitalize. So hello user.capitalize, welcome. And then what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to do greeting, and let's do, actually, you know what? I don't need, this parameter doesn't need a name. Or this method doesn't need a parameter because I'm waiting on the user to enter information. So I should be able to do this, and I'm just going to copy and paste all this in IRB. Let's try greeting. Hello, employee. What is your name? Name is Cadwin. Hello, Cadwin. Welcome. So there you go. That's like a really basic deconstructing and explaining what you're doing when you're solving problems. So that's the hard part for me, at least, was taking this bigger concept and breaking it down into little tiny chunks. Because if you try to solve a problem that's really complex and it's like a big thing, I'll do one here with all of the substrings, and I'm not going to necessarily break down and go through each process of finding the substrings in detail. But if you did try to do this and you never encountered finding substrings, or you're not aware of certain variable or certain methods that you can utilize, it's a very difficult problem to accomplish, especially when you're first starting out. And job interviews, they'll give you a problem like that, and sometimes you have to solve one or two of them within that hour, and you got to be able to, do this stuff like really really good. So let me go and try that. Let me try. See if I can do this here of finding all the substrings of the string. We're going to say string equals hello world. I'll go ahead and make it a method since we were just using some methods. So I'm going to call this substrings. Actually, I'll call it an array of substrings because I'm going to put them all in an array and string. So I'm going to say array of substrings equals an empty array. And what I'm doing there is I'm initializing local variable array of substrings to an empty array. And the reason I have an empty array is because I'm going to do some stuff with the string, and then as I'm going through the string, I'm going to take little pieces of it and I'm going to shovel it into that empty array. And that empty array is like a little box. It looks like a box, and it's going to hold stuff for me. So that's why I'm setting that up there. So I'm going to do 0.up2 string. I'll explain what this all is. 0.up2 string.length -1. I can type 1 do, and this is going to be the index. Here, I got so much muscle memory with this. Let me write it all out first and then explain what everything is. String.length -index do length Then for each iteration, we're going to take an array of substrings. I'm going to push them into the result array of substrings. I'm going to end, and I'm going to end it. Why did I get an end there? Why don't you like that end? I need to end it twice. Because I have to end it for the up to and end it for the up to. Oh, you see that? The reason why this IRB is red is because it's thinking the end line needs 1 because I didn't put this parenthesis here. Oh, now it's just kind of glitching out there. Hold on. So 1.upstream.length minus index. See this one little thing. That one little parenthesis throws off your whole program. So that's why details are so important. And on top of details, you have to be like Spock. I'm telling you, you gotta be like Spock. You want to be a Spock monk. You want to be Spock that went to some obscure planet in the galaxy all by himself and nobody was around and he just meditated for like 5 years. That's the mindset that you want to be. When you spend 4 hours, coding stuff and it doesn't work, you gotta be chill. How many of you have read, oh, what was that? That was an awesome Star Wars series back when Star Wars was awesome. Mandalorian's pretty cool. I give the Mandalorian props. I like the Mandalorian. What is it? Bane. Yes, Bane. Awesome villain. Really cool. Like real rugged. This badass dude on this obscure planet. He's just like drilling some kind of like magical ore out of the ground that they use for uh, the ships as like some kind of armor. And he's trying to go all around the galaxy finding those little discs. I forget what they were called, but they're like these the discs that like the Sith lords and everyone would use. That it stores tons and tons of information about ancient Sith knowledge, or whatever. And so he spent all this time, like I think it was days. He was like putting all these little pieces together, and then he had it almost done. He was like 99% done. And this guy, he's just really full of. He's very disciplined. He's very. He's got a really good work ethic. He's just, he's all about success. And he's sitting there and he gets ready to put that one little piece left on the. I think it's a holocron. I think that's what it is. Put it back on there and he goes, boop, and he puts it on there, and then the whole thing just crumbles and falls apart in front of his face, and he just flips out and goes nuts and goes into like a crazy rage, like destroying everything. Yeah, you can't be like Bane. You have to be like Spock. Let's keep that in mind. So we have this here, 0 to up to string out length minus 1 do index, 1 up to string out length minus index do length, array of substring string index length. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to end. No, why did you go down here? You stay up here. Ah, it's because I put in there. So we're going to end that first iteration, or first up to loop. Well, it's not really, I guess it kind of is a loop. And we're going to end, but it's not really a loop, it's a method invocation. So we're going to end the next one. And then, now, the way, why are you there? Now, the way Ruby works is, I don't think, I'm only really familiar with Ruby, so correct me if I'm wrong. The way Ruby works is the return value of the method can be the last evaluated expression. Or the last evaluated, I guess, expression. Like the final thing in the method that's returned is going to be the return value. So if you have like a method and it's called like add, and you do, here, let me write it up here. So if you have like this, if you have define add, and you do like num1, num2, and you do num1 plus num2, this is going to return the first number plus the second number, and it's going to return that. Now, if you do the same thing, but you add in puts, like if you have this like num1 plus num2 equals answer. No, actually, you shouldn't do that. You should say answer. What? Insert equals num1 plus num2 puts answer. Excuse me. You might think that it's going to just output the same thing, but instead of like having a num1 and num2 as a return value, it's just going to put that return value out to the screen, and that's what's going to return. But that's not the case because puts returns nil, and since that's the last evaluated expression in that method, that method's going to return nil. So then you'll get the undefined method error, and that's going to throw all kinds of stuff and confusion for you. So you got to be clear about return values. I think Python and a lot of languages you have to explicitly return. So you have to say stuff like, you can do this in Ruby too, but it's Ruby. The standard practice, I guess, is just to implicitly return stuff. So you can say like return whatever, and I'll illustrate that down here. So now that I got this down here, I got that iteration done. Why does that space keep going there? End. And now I'm going to return the array of substrings. So that's my last thing. And I think that should be good. So I'm going to do array of, I should have called it something else than array of substrings, to be honest. It can be confusing. You might get some, probably not now, but you could get variable scope. Undefined local variable or method string. So yeah, there's obviously no string in there called strng. So it's right here. I'm gonna put an I there. I think I have to go up here. I can't just click on it with the mouse in IRB. Let's try this again. All right, so there you go. That method is now providing you with all of the available substrings that you can get out of those two words, hello world. And that includes spaces. And there's different things you could say. Don't include space, then you have to account for that with your algorithm or whatever you're going to do. But the reason why I did that is because I just want to show you like what the complexity of doing this method here. Like this syntax may not look too crazy, but getting to the point where you can just crank that out, that takes a while, and it takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice. And one thing to keep in mind with what's going on here is I'll review it. So that first part there, we have local variable array of substrings equals an empty array. Like I said, that's our box. That's where we're going to store stuff. Now for this here, 0.up2 and the 1.up2, what this is doing is, like, let's say we have this string here, or let's say, let me do string equals hello world. So our string is hello world, whatever. So the first letter is H, and that is in the 0 space, and E is in the 1 space, and L is in the 2. So what I'm saying is, go from 0 up to the length of the string minus 1. Do so, and that's going to be index. And what that means is you start from the beginning of the string, you go up to the end except for 1, and that's going to be the specific index that it's at. And you can see where it's got HELL. So it's finding like the index spot. Like, but this basically it's make it make more sense. This is the starting point of each string, and then this is going to be the stopping point of each string. And then it's saying, okay, take for each iteration, and that's another thing you have to learn is like looping. Like if you have a loop that has you want it to iterate 5 times, that means it's going to go through your code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 iterations. So what this is saying is for every iteration, take that string, like that parameter, and go from this starting point to this end point and do this for every single iteration. And this is not a very efficient algorithm because like even in code wars, sometimes when you use something like this, it'll just time out at, it says it takes 12,000 milliseconds and that was too slow or something. I'm like, God. But for all intents and purposes, this is fine for what we're trying to do. So yeah, that's a little bit of what's going on with these substrings. And then we go through that. We find each one. So we're finding H, HE, HEL, HELL, et cetera, all the way through. And as we're finding them in this shovel operator, it's taking the string and it's placing it into the array of substrings. It's like shoving them into that box. And I list that last so that way the method will return that. Now, all of this stuff, this is like, if your mind's like blown and this does not make any sense, like don't feel bad. This stuff's complex. And I'm just doing this to kind of show you why you need to start at the basics. And because I can bring up a topic, I'm like, well, go through the specific iteration. And then like, if you don't know what an iteration is or how to iterate or whatever, there's a lot to learn. And that's why you need to be able to understand all these concepts first. And going through those introductory courses through a variety of places will really help you out. So for another thing that we have here in terms of like that return value, let me do this again. So we have our add method. I did something wrong here, which is not surprising. Why is this? What's going on with this? Why is this not like this? Oh, it's acting weird. Yeah, we're gonna quit. I'm gonna go back into it. So far, I've found that it seems like 70% of all of my technical problems with like just the computer not programming, but in general is like turn it off and turn it back on or plug it in. That fixes a lot of stuff. So we'll see if this works. So we're gonna do define add num1. Oh, once again, you know why it wasn't working? Is if you look up here, I have num1 and num2. You need a comma between each parameter because if you don't have that comma, it's just not working. I'm pretty sure that was at least part of it because it's two different, because those are the parameters that are setting up the different variables that are going to be allowed within that method. But if you just have a space and have a comma, it thinks it's just one thing. So once again, bunch of stuff, folks. I'm sorry that I'm rambling all over the place, but it gives you an idea. So num1 and num2. So we're going to do add. We're going to do 1 and 4. 5. Cool. We're going to add 1 and 3. 4. Okay. We're going to say result equals add 1 and 4. So result is 5. So what I did is I initialized a variable called result and I saved it to the return value of what that add method is. Now let's say if I have this one here, what am I going to, if I keep it add, it's going to replace my other method. So I'm going to call it something different. Let's just call it add 2. All right, so what do you think this is going to return? If I do add 2 and I have 1 and 4. Take a second and think about that. What do you think this is going to be? I mean, I think it would be 5, right? Now, it does add together to equal 5, but it does not return 5. It returns nil. And the reason it returns nil, whereas if I have this other one, if I have add 1 and 4, the answer is 5, but it also returns 5. And the reason it returns 5 is because 1 plus 4 is the last evaluated expression within that method. But in this one, add 2, I have puts. And no matter what, puts always returns nil. So if you're doing this and you're trying to be, oh, okay, so I'm going to say result 2 equals add 2, and then 1 and 4. So my result 2, nil. So can I do result 2 plus result? No, because you can't add the integer 5 to nil, because nil is basically like a placeholder, it's nothing. So once again, this kind of goes back to like my point about all of these little different pieces that you have to comprehend and figure out. That's why I just don't think it'd be really efficient for me to go from a ground up thing. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just pick little different topics. I'll ramble on about them, and if you can keep up with my jarring, bouncing all over the place explanations of things, maybe it'll help you out. And if you have any questions about anything specific or like a topic that you'd want me to maybe cover, I could try to give it a shot. Once again, I'm pretty new at all this stuff, but check me out for my other videos. I'm going to do some stuff about tabletop, culture, like the ancient Greeks, a little bit here, some Stoicism, some Socrates, world religions, a variety of interesting topics that I think people might find useful. Movie reviews, all that good stuff. All right, well, thanks a lot for checking me out. You can find me on hopefully every video streaming service, but YouTube doesn't let anybody really stream anymore. All right, take care.